Shoutout to Law and Crime Network.
Welcome to Digital Diva Daily. This is commentary under fair use for review and educational purposes. Today's scandal, up next. So let's get into it. Roll the clip.
As I speak right now, Cassandra Ventura has taken the stand. Now, unfortunately, in this case, in a federal case, there are no cameras in the courtroom. There is no audio in the courtroom. But we are going to do our best to report to you in real time what is happening with her testimony and analyzing her testimony in real time. And we're going to also be taking your questions about this testimony, about the case in general, as it progresses. So if you have a question, submit it on YouTube. We will answer it here on air. I'm not going to do it alone. I have with me here in studio Rich Schoenstein, trial attorney. It's great to see you, Rich. Thanks for jumping here so quickly. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here. Big day in this trial.
This is a big day because she is victim number one in this case. I think it would be fair to say we probably wouldn't have criminal charges if it wasn't for Cassandra Ventura filing her lawsuit in November of 2023. We all know that the videotape of her purportedly being beaten by Sean Combs in 2016 changed the course of this entire legal saga. It came up a lot yesterday. She came up a lot yesterday. And now her testifying for the prosecution, I think a fair argument is this case either rises or falls with her testimony. So what has she testified to so far? Well, first of all, she's quite pregnant. She's about 8.5 months. 9 months pregnant. She's 38 years old. She explained that she was with Sean Combs for 10 years. We're talking about a 17-year age difference. She admitted that during the course of their relationship, he introduced her to certain sex acts. She asked to describe the relationship she had with him. Quote, there were violent arguments that would usually result in some sort of physical abuse, dragging, different things of that nature. Again, why is this important? He's charged with sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. He's charged with racketeering conspiracy, a criminal enterprise, underlying crimes like sex trafficking, kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction, and also transporting sex workers for purposes of prostitution. She went on to say that he would stomp her in the head if she was down. There was frequent violence. She would have black eyes. She would have bruises. She was asked by the prosecution to describe what a freak-off was. And she said, quote, it basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so that I could perform for Sean. It involved Combs being able to watch with me, the other person, and actually direct us on what we were doing. Eventually, it became a job for me, pretty much. And by the way, this comes after the testimony of a male performer who says he was hired by Cassandra Ventura and Sean Combs to have sex with Cassie in front of Sean Combs. She described how their relationship was quite complex, talking about these freak-offs. When she was first introduced to them, she says, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much. She explained how Sean Combs ultimately controlled a lot of her life. She talked about blackmail materials, so videos that Combs purportedly shot of her during these sexual encounters. She was concerned that they would be published, they would be released. Quote, he had many resources to do that. She was shown the 2016 video of that hallway attack, as I mentioned. She confirmed it was after a freak-off, which is important because while the defense would say this is an unfortunate incident of domestic violence and domestic violence is not sex trafficking, she has confirmed that this was after a freak-off. This was in furtherance of sex trafficking. She says she was afraid that if she said no to him, it would make him angry. So again, we're going to get more of her testimony in real time. So far, Rich, from what I've said, what are you taking away from her testimony?
Well, obviously, this is a horrendous relationship, and she suffered a lot. I think the defense is arguing, in essence, that she was a consensual, willing participant in this relationship. It was a 10-year relationship. It had ups and downs, and the defense is arguing that some of the things she argues now she was forced to do, she did willingly and perhaps even enjoyed at the time. So that's what we're getting at. But this is really shocking stuff for a jury to have to hear all of this, and I think see some of it is coming up.
Don't you think that there is a potential problem for the prosecution? Because we heard it, it was funny. We have a question from TDB. Jesse, does the male dancer's testimony about Cassie contradict the prosecution's opening statement? Now, he had testified that he thought he heard Sean Combs slapping her, that there were instances where he saw him dragging her, but at the same time, he was getting paid by her. He was texting her. She was participating in these freak-offs. You wonder, this case is a thin line. Was it coercion or not? Was she a victim or partner in this? Do you think when you hear the testimony of that male dancer and you hear her testimony now, it'll be difficult for the jury to believe that everything was coerced and against her will?
I don't think the jury is going to believe that everything was coerced and against her will at the time, but it doesn't have to. There's a massive power imbalance here. So even if she willingly participated for parts of this relationship, he has all of the power and he's using it. And the one thing you mentioned, I wrote down, blackmail video. That stuff's really important to the case, right? This is carrot and stick territory, but he kept, allegedly, things like these videos to keep people in line. And the allegation here is if she sort of got a little bit antsy about how the relationship was going, he would threaten to release videos that would destroy any chance of her having a career.
The defense would say the only person that was in possession of the videos was Cassandra Ventura. That's a point that they made yesterday.
That's an evidentiary point. I don't know the answer to that.
Let me ask you this. We have a question from Lauren, who, by the way, has this cute little emoji, smiley face with the hearts. I like it. It's nice. I have a question. Do you think now that the prosecution has played their ace with Cassie, that they have more damning evidence to come?
I would expect so, because when you're prosecuting a case like this, you want to start strong. And I think some of the idea of putting her on in day 2 of this trial is to start strong. They put on a little corroborating testimony first, right, from this dancer, escort, whatever you want to call him. And now they have her, the security guard, and they get to show the video, that horrible video, and now she testifies. But it can't be the prosecution's plan to try this case that now they're just going to wind their way through some other inconsequential witnesses. I mean, they have 2 more victims, as I understand it.
Well, let's talk about this. The practical reality is, A, they need to get her on the stand before she gives birth, okay?
Well, that's true, too. That's true. Good point.
Yeah, because victim 3 is nowhere to be found, so they may have to make sure that victim 1 is still available. But also, I agree that they started very strong with corroborating evidence before they brought her on, because what happened? When she filed her lawsuit in November of 2023, made these wild allegations, I think people said, how do we know this is true or not? As soon as that video was released by CNN, the whole game changed, because people not only believed that particular incident in the complaint, they believed overall all the allegations that she made, and it seems the prosecution is doing just that. Now, it's interesting thinking about this. By the way, I'm going to give more updates about her testimony. So right now, Ventura said, I thought we were monogamous. The prosecutor asked, was it made public? No, I was his artist, also his family, his children, meaning their relationship wasn't public yet. Who was linked to him publicly? Kim Porter, Miss Ventura responds. How did Sean treat you at this time? We had fun. So a lot of this is talking about the beginnings of their relationship, and she has to concede some points, right? She can't just say, it was a disaster at the very beginning. I hated him from the very beginning. I was under a distress from the very beginning. There has to be an aspect to it where she explains, no, I started this relationship. I was young. I was excited, but then it devolved, right? In order to be credible on the stand about the story, I think.
I agree with that. And also to acknowledge that there were benefits to her of being in this relationship. It would, at least in theory, help her career. It would get her to meet people that she otherwise wouldn't have been able to meet. So all of that is true. There's nothing wrong with her conceding that, because none of that justifies being dragged down a hallway and beaten.
Exactly. And by the way, we jumped on here on air immediately as soon as we found out that Cassandra Ventura was officially taking the stand. And one thing that makes Law and Crime a little bit different than other outlets like that is our viewers. Not only do we value our viewers, but we are making content right now purely for our viewers on YouTube. We want to give you the most up-to-date information about this case in real time. And again, we are the only channel, the only news organization that is producing content for you specifically. We value that. YouTube is where the most hard cutting edge news is coming from, and we want to get it out to you as quickly as possible. So thank you so much to our supporters. We are going to continue to take your questions for for a while now, because she's going to be on the stand. So let's keep it going. Again, thank you to our YouTube audience. Jane, are there any more witnesses to Cassie getting attacked by Diddy apart from the bodyguard? I mean, I don't know. I would imagine so.
Yeah, I don't know either. There's a videotape, so that's kind of a witness. But yes, I would imagine there are other witnesses who are going to talk about the relationship and probably talk about some of the physical stuff.
Well, they mentioned chiefs of staff. They mentioned a chef. One of the questions from the defense yesterday was, how is this a conspiracy, right? For a conspiracy, you need two or more people to agree. Yeah. Who are the people that coordinated and facilitated this racketeering and sex trafficking operation are not criminally charged?
So I see two major hurdles for the prosecution in this case. One is what we've been talking about. They have to get past the idea that this is consensual behavior by other people who are behaving in a questionable fashion. They have to get past that. The second bigger hurdle to me is turning an abuse case into a racketeering case, right? Because yes, they have to prove RICO is very challenging. You have to prove a RICO enterprise. You have to prove a pattern of racketeering activity. You have to prove multiple predicate acts that are violations of separate federal laws. It is hard to sustain a RICO case. We've seen some other cases where people have tried. That's going to be a major hurdle here. The fact that he had this 10-year relationship, and even if it's arguably true, he took advantage of her, he treated her horribly, he beat her, he did all these terrible things to her, that's not racketeering.
I say that the prosecution spent so much time yesterday in their opening statement trying to explain to this jury why it's a crime. Because it's not a garden variety trafficking or racketeering case. And I think the more they have to explain it, that's a problem for them. I think it's a weakness in their case, personally. Now we have an update from court. Prosecutor asked Cassandra Ventura, what was his lifestyle like? Ventura responds, he had all these assistants. He could get things done. He traveled quite a bit. And then apparently she's shown a photo, and she says, this is Sean and I at a strip club in New York, like 2007, 2008, Halloween. How did Sean Combs' moods vary? Day to day. Now look, he is charged with specific crimes that John Smith on the street can't meet. There is an argument here, very powerful, had all these businesses, different resources, different employees. He would be in the position to be able to carry out a sex trafficking or racketeering operation. That's what makes him unique, though.
Sure, but is that what he's doing? Is he running an entertainment and fashion industry, or is he running essentially a criminal organization?
By the way, we have a poll up right now. You can participate in it. Do you think Cassie Ventura was a victim or partner in this? You ready for this? 82%. Well, this doesn't make sense. 82% say yes. I don't know if that's yes to, I think we need clarification. 82% say victim or partner. We'll get a clarification on that.
By the way,
right now.
But that's my answer to that question.
Oh, okay. 82% say victim. 82% say victim. Maybe based on we're reporting on the testimony right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think she is a victim if the allegations are true, but also she is involved in some of the criminal act. I mean, she's getting those prostitutes, right? She's making payments to them, allegedly. She's having them come. So she's involved in some of the alleged criminal activity. And that's an interesting point that wouldn't just apply to her. Other people in his orbit might be some combination of victim and co-conspirator.
But you know what? That video changes everything, because the argument would be, what do you think happens if she says no?
Yeah.
What do you think happens if she says, I'm not in the mood for a freak off tonight. I'm not going to pay the dancer. That's what's going to happen. That video is arguably the most important piece of evidence because it sets the stage when we're talking about coercion or force. Question from Angelina. How old was Cassie when they first started dating? I think she was 19 years old, so you're talking about a 17-year age difference. That's important. I think that's an important factor if you're talking about power and control, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that he's older and obviously has much more power anyway.
Sherry Williams asks, what kind of time is Diddy facing if he's found guilty? Do you want me to? I have it listed unless you want me to answer that one.
I would say life in prison, but you
Well,
can tell me specifically.
So this is exactly what he would be facing. So if he's convicted of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, I pulled this up because I figured people might be curious. If he is convicted of racketeering conspiracy, the top charge, that is a maximum sentence of life in prison. You know what the minimum is for that? Well, okay, so that's life in prison. Maximum sentence for sex trafficking, life in prison. You know what the minimum is for sex trafficking? 15 years in prison. And then the transportation for purposes of prostitution carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Rich, I have to tell you, I don't know about racketeering. I don't know about sex trafficking if he's going to be convicted of those. I am fairly confident he's going to be convicted of allegedly transporting sex workers with the intent that they engage in prostitution. Their argument, as far as I understood yesterday, their defense yesterday was he hired people for their time and experience.
Let me tell you something. If he gets out of this trial only convicted of transporting for prostitution, that is a defense victory. They would take that in a heartbeat, I bet.
Because I think if he is convicted of that, he might not get 10 years. He might get, a shorter amount and time served, his time already in the MDC. I don't know, but it wouldn't be life in prison. Wouldn't be 15 years.
Yeah, he might not get full 10 years. He might not get the hardest prison term, the hardest prison life, right? He would get out. He would still have a life. He would still have his enterprise. So I think that would actually be a defense victory, all things considered.
So we have an update from court. I think she's describing what the alleged abuse was like. She talks about anger, zoning out. She was asked, how did this impact you? She says, greatly. The next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. She also apparently talks about psychological abuse. He'd tell me to watch my mouth, change my face. So, I do wonder, that has a strong impact because there's another case that we're covering right now. It's the Alexander brothers. And they're being charged with sex trafficking. And the argument you hear from defense attorneys is this is a very novel way to charge individuals. That if you're talking about romantic relationships or girlfriends or flings, and you're taking them on trips, you're paying for their meals, you're buying them gifts, maybe you're promising things, romantic gestures, are we now in a position where romantic relationships are just on the line of sex trafficking, or where does it differ?
Well, here he is allegedly bringing in prostitutes to participate in these freak-offs and paying them for sexual services. So that to me would clearly be sex trafficking if it's true. It's not just about the girlfriend. It's not just about the relationship. It's about these sex workers that he is moving about.
We have a question from To Trune. What about male victims? Seems like this case is solely based on women victims.
This case appears to be based on women victims. I mean, I've heard speculation too about male victims. I don't know where that stands.
Well, there's lawsuits. There's a lot of lawsuits that have been filed by male victims. And I wonder, do you think that was intentional for the prosecution to not include those in this case? I mean, why weren't minor victims? Let me say this. He has been accused in lawsuits of abusing minors, okay? Allegations, accusations, okay, never been criminally charged. If you're the prosecution and you want a slam dunk case against Sean Combs and you want justice for all of the alleged federal crimes he committed, the problem with the minor victim for a defendant like that is there's no consent defense anymore. Do you think it's like we want to be as specific as possible with these charges? We don't want to make this case overly broad. The bigger it becomes, the more risk it'll fall down. Thoughts?
I don't buy that. I think the prosecution wanted as many victims as it could get. But I think the prosecution had to scrutinize every potential victim to, first of all, are they going to show up, right? We have an issue with one of the three, whether or not they're going to show up. So they had to scrutinize that. And also, how are their claims? How are they going to be on cross-examination? How is it going to play? They wanted multiple victims. The only way this case is what it is because there are multiple victims. This is not a RICO case if it's just what he did to one person, no matter how horrible it was. that doesn't get you to racketeering. So they need the multiple victims.
And that brings up a good question I have. If you read the indictment, let me rephrase that. There's been many superseding indictments.
Yeah.
It says alleged victims, right? Alleged victim 1, 2, 3, 4. But then it says victims including, like victims, many victims including alleged victim 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that mean we're going to hear other people who are not enumerated as one of the alleged victims, but are just other victims in the case? Because I don't.
It could be. They could bring people who are other victims in the case, especially the way the case is pled, the way the case is being tried. Now, they would have had to tell the defense by now who those potential witnesses are, and I assume, well, I don't know if we would have heard about it in this particular. Usually you would have heard about it. You would see it on the docket, but I don't know.
So talking about this alleged criminal enterprise and how, based on the opening statement from yesterday, he didn't just have staff who were helping him commit the crimes, but also covering them up. Just now, an update from court. Prosecutor asked Cassie Ventura, how would he keep tabs on you? To which she apparently responds, he didn't live far apart. Oh, we didn't live far apart. He'd send security to come find me or a trusted assistant. Like who? David James, Christina Courtroom, who we all know has been a central figure in this case. Maybe not the criminal case, but she's come up in lawsuits before. The prosecutor asks her, was your relationship exclusive? Ventura replies, no. If she's naming names like David James or Christina Courtroom, do they have to testify, you think?
I don't think they have to testify, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I would think this is all planned out, that she's going to indicate some people and then the prosecution is going to bring them in later in the trial to verify, right? One thing you really want to do with a witness like this, the defense is going to say that she's embellishing. They might say she's lying, but that's going to be a little hard to do with that video, right? They can't just say she's a liar, but they're going to say she's exaggerating, she's embellishing, they're painting it a certain way because of the case. So you have to bring in these corroborating witnesses and whatever other corroborating evidence you have to verify what it is she's saying. So it would be very useful, for example, if she says, yes, David James came around to check on me on behalf of Mr. Combs, and then David James takes the stand and says, yes, I did that.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Well, and yesterday they talked about the defense, her lawsuit in 2023, her attorney being in the courtroom, that she has an incentive, a monetary incentive to fabricate this situation. We've got a question from Daniela. By the way, we're taking your questions on YouTube about this case, about Cassandra Ventura's testimony that's happening in real time. We're trying to update you as quickly as possible about what she says in that courtroom. No cameras in the courtroom, no audio in the courtroom. So this is the best we can do to bring you her testimony in real time. Question from Daniela, 3984, talking about the video. What version of the hotel video was played in the courtroom? Was it the sped up version? Now, I believe it was portions of the surveillance video, not the CNN video, and cell phone video that was taken by the security guard who testified, Israel Flores. He had apparently taken a cell phone video of the surveillance footage to show his wife, but that became a big pretrial issue about what the jury was going to see.
Yeah. And by the way, that story was a little odd. I took a video of it to show my wife. For what purpose? I mean, that was a little strange.
Well, you're not going to believe this happened, even though he didn't report it to the police.
I think it's going to be difficult. I think the defense would like you to believe that video's been doctored somehow, but I think they're going to have trouble sustaining that.
Hey, would you like a civil law question?
Yes, please.
Yes, this is our litigator here. Question from Teodora Bodurova. Can Cassie sue Diddy again if Diddy's found guilty as charged?
So, Cassie, if you remember, sued Diddy. And that was the first thing we really heard about this. That was before the video. There was this blockbuster lawsuit in November of 2023 that really put these allegations out there. And she was very detailed. In fact, the front page of her lawsuit had a trigger warning on it. It was so detailed. That case was settled the next day. And I would have to think that the settlement included an agreement that she wouldn't sue him again for anything. Usually, if you're going to settle like that and pay the kind of money she would have gotten paid for settling that lawsuit, you get what is known as a general release. And a general release means you don't sue me for anything that happened. Now, here's one caveat. Up to the date of this agreement. Up to the date of this agreement. So then if you the next day punch me in the face, I have a new lawsuit against you.
Yeah.
Right? But at least up to the agreement, she can't go back now and say, I want more money.
Well, for the same conduct, right? I mean, if he comes out and he did something to her, or allegedly did something to her after the agreement was signed.
Yeah. Presumably they got it. And it also, like, you have to make sure the release covers all of his companies, all of these other individuals who were involved. It has to be a general release of everybody. You don't want to leave any wiggle room to have a lawsuit.
We have a follow-up question to this from Fads. So why did he settle if he was innocent?
Well, I mean, people settle all the time when they think they're not liable. People, like, with the thing that really surprised me when that case was filed is that the case was filed. Typically in a case like that, you draft the complaint and you send it to the defendant and you say, dear sir, please pay me a boatload of money or I'm going to file this publicly in court. And if there's any merit to it, or if just for publicity reasons, the defendant decides to negotiate and pay, and it never goes to court. So it fascinated me at the time that she actually filed that publicly and he settled it the next day. That unfortunately was pretty telling, that he didn't put up any fight on the lawsuit. He didn't even want to litigate it. He didn't even want to go to discovery. He wanted to settle it immediately.
And if he would have settled it before she filed it, I think we would have been in a very different position than we are today.
Oh, I totally agree, because that lawsuit, I think, is what sets this ship sailing.
I agree. Okay, update from court. Prosecutor asks Cassandra Ventura, did you see other men? Cassandra Ventura responds, yes. Prosecutor asks, did Sean see other women? Ventura responds, yes. He said, I am Puff Daddy. I was insanely jealous. Did you move to LA with him? Yes. He wanted to be close to his kids who were there. It goes to a theme from yesterday, where the defense owned up and said, yeah, he's jealous, he's angry, he's violent. He engaged in domestic violence. That 2016 video is indefensible. When you hear her testify like that, does it help the defense? Does it help the prosecution? Because the defense got in front of it. They didn't say he's a saint.
Well, it helps the prosecution, but the defense did the correct thing in opening statement, and they had to do it. They didn't have any choice. I mean, the defense couldn't walk into this trial and say he's the victim of a conspiracy to invent evidence against him. That was never going to work. The thing's on video, and there's lots of other evidence. So they were going to have to say he is not a delightful guy. You people on the jury probably aren't going to like things that he did. He did engage in things we consider domestic violence, but this is a racketeering case. And I liked that about the opening statement. They made that very clear. You're going to have to judge the crimes alleged here, not whether you like him or dislike him.
First off, we just want to thank Cassie Ventura for her bravery. Domestic violence is a monster of a situation to find yourself in. Watching that video,
lights up, headlines rolling, voices fly and the tea keeps pouring. Every shade, every glow, we show it. Castle and diamond in motion, yeah, we own it. It's the moolah move, that golden groove, where the truth's on beat and the vibes come smooth. We shine, we speak, we headline the news. Moolah, moolah, we do what we do. All eyes on the empire.
If you or someone you know is dealing with a monster, we have pinned a number in our description for help.
Thanks for tuning into the channel. Comment below how you feel, and don't forget to subscribe. Support the squad, like, share, or tip us a digital coffee if today's take gave what it was supposed to give.